All right, welcome everyone to the third edition of the virtual North American Nerd Night. I'm Matt Wasowski, the big boss of Nerd Night, and you see you've got a couple of other smiling faces looking at you. Wave at everyone, smiling faces. We've got David, who's going to be our presenter from Nerd Night Toronto. We've got Sam, who is the co-boss of Nerd Night Toronto. We've got Jim, who's going to be up in about half an hour. He is the newest boss of Memphis. He's just relocated there, so you'll hear from him shortly. So I just want to welcome all of you to this 2-hour event. Thanks for everyone who has logged into the previous ones. As always, we do just like we would at the face-to-face nerd nights to have a drink or two, just assuming that you are not listening or watching this while driving, or if you're under 21 in the States and 18 in Canada.
Or 19, depends on where you are.
Yeah. 19. Great. I don't know. I don't want to break any international drinking laws. All right. And so, yeah, so the lineup's pretty straightforward. We got Nerd Night Toronto kicking off at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 5:30 Pacific Time, followed by Nerd Night Memphis, Nerd Night Calgary, and then Nerd Night LA is going to home. And the 1.5 hour and refrigerator and make me eat or drink whatever you see in there. So if you still want to donate to get on that list, just go to PayPal.com. It's not my RV or aviation account, I promise you. That'll go. Nope, okay. I might have froze. So let's try it again.
Technical issues. It happens.
That never happens.
Oh, nerds, you never have any technical issues, right? Nothing like that ever happens.
I think you're up, Sam.
All right. So welcome, nerds across North America. I'm Sam. I'm coming to you from what is currently very hot Toronto. I think we're in about 40 degrees this week, but it's cool that you're here. So I am one of 3 Nerd Night bosses in Toronto. Other 2 went and had babies, so I am flying solo tonight. I know, but we're very excited to have some young nerds in our lives. But right now, it's my pleasure to introduce a fan favorite from Nerd Night Toronto, David Donaldson. Dave describes himself as a professional facilitator, but an amateur nerd. I think by the end of his talk, you'll see he's probably one of the pros amongst us. He makes a living training folks how to lead change in organizations. Actually, how I met him, he taught me how to do evaluation and needs assessment for learning and training for adults. He has a passion for flight, as you'll see tonight, adventures in amateur flight. He's been a pilot for 35 years, a facilitator for 27, a flight instructor for 18 years, and a nerd his entire life. So without further ado, welcome, Dave.
Thank you so much. Lovely introduction. And just for our friends south of the border, when you say it's 40 degrees, I'm not on apparently. Oh, okay.
So yeah, it's 40 degrees Celsius.
Absolutely.
Not, yeah, just to clarify, because good point in the translation.
All right. So thank you so much for that warm introduction. I think there's a delay. So welcome. We're going to be taking a look at adventures in human flight. Now, when I say human flight, I'm talking about human-powered flight. So Sam kind of, gave us the introduction, but we're actually a couple of years beyond that introduction because I've been 37 years as a pilot, now 20 years as a flight instructor. But the real piece that I want to talk to you tonight about is my time with the AeroVelo team. And the AeroVelo team built and flew 2 aviation firsts, and these are literally first time in human history, an Ornithopter and a human-powered helicopter. So I was fortunate enough to be involved in those 2 projects, and tonight I want to give you a bit of a background on that. And yes, my name is Dave, and I am a nerd. Okay, so try to take the flight instructor out, and yeah, that's kind of tough. So I thought, let's start off a little bit with just a bit of science here, a bit of basics of how airplanes fly. So I'm going to give you the quick 101 on how airplanes fly. Here's how airplanes fly. They move through the air. Air flows over the fuselage, over the wings, over the tail, And here's the secret, folks. That's where the magic happens. So we've got all this magic happening around us, and that's what makes airplanes fly. And that's the honest truth secret. So if we think back to antiquity, if we think back to early man, as they looked up in the skies and they saw birds flying, and from the earliest recorded history that we have, even back into ancient Greece and Greek mythology, and we think about Icarus, man has wanted to fly. Humans have wanted to fly. And when we looked at the models that we had flapping birds. So we have these myths of Icarus, putting feathers on his arms and flapping his arms. And this mode of flight, this is what we call flapping flight. And this is where ornithopter comes from, is the word ornithopter. So, but before we go there, before we get to what this amazing achievement is, I want to just do a little bit of a history, and let's just look at through the ages of the progression of flight in human flight. So it all started in 1485, and Leonardo da Vinci did some drawings. Now, the drawing here is for an ornithopter, it's for a flapping wing. So he actually, figured out the mechanics of having a hinge and a lever and having this thing flap. So that was all the way back in 1485. And we fast forward a little bit to 1783, and the Montgolfier brothers in France, they actually built and flew the first aircraft. Now, it was a hot air balloon, but this was the first time that humans left the surface of the Earth. Well, kinda, because the first flight in a hot air balloon was actually a sheep, a duck, and a rooster. Now, why a sheep, a duck, and a rooster? Well, a sheep is actually anatomically fairly similar to humans. So they thought, not really sure if we leave the surface of the Earth if we'll survive, so let's put a sheep up there. The duck was because we already know they can do high altitude. And the rooster, which is a non-flying bird, is actually there for, really just the control. So they sent these three animals up. 20 minutes odd later, they came and landed and everyone was fine. So they loaded some humans up and away they went. Now we move forward to 1843. So, another 50 odd years or so pass, and along comes Sir George Cayley. Now, Sir George was studying aeronautics, he was studying flight, and he is considered the grandfather of modern aviation. He actually patented the first 3-axis control. Now, 3-axis control, if we think about an airplane in flight, we can go up, we can go down, there's 1 axis, we can go left, we can go right, there's 2, and then we can also roll from side to side, and there's 3. Now, Sir George was the first one to successfully test and fly gliders. And actually, sorry, that's actually not Sir George. That was Sir George's coachman. I think it was one of those proper English gentlemanly things to not be the one in the craft. So they got his coachman to go, and unfortunately that gentleman's name is lost to history, because the moment that craft landed, and it successfully landed, by the way, and he was safe, he jumped out and said, "That's not what I've been hired for," and ran off into the woods, never to be seen again. So unfortunately, we've lost that name to history, but Sir George is the one who patented it and did many experiments and flights with gliders. A short time later, Otto Lilienthal out of Germany was experimenting with gliders, and he was using foot-launched ones, mainly using weight shifting for control. And Otto he's really the godfather of glider flight. So he's the one who really, did that first. And the big, really interesting thing with Otto is that he actually had over 2,000 flights to his credit. That's a lot of flights. He unfortunately has another distinction, which is he's the first fatality in an airplane crash. So unfortunately, but he really advanced the science. But we're still back in the late 1800s. Then along come these two brothers from Ohio, and in 1903, what they basically did is they took the gliders that they're experimenting with and they bolted an engine to it. And this is one of those timing things in history. Up until that point, engines were typically big and heavy. We're just coming out of the steam age. We're just starting into the internal combustion engines. And now we're getting to an engine with a good power to weight ratio. Now, they actually were not the first ones to launch a engine powered aircraft. That was actually with Sir George. And he did it with a steam engine. So can you imagine an airplane with a steam engine? Like, we're talking boiler, we're talking water reservoir, we're just, big, heavy thing. So when the internal combustion engine came along, the power to weight ratios became to a point where we can now realistically create an airplane that's going to fly. And they did. And that was 1903. So we're what, about 120 odd years now. Not a lot happened, in the intervening years. Come 2010, a gentleman by the name of Todd Reichert and Cam Robertson came to the airfield that I fly out of, and there's a picture of Todd landing on his first solo flight. They came to our airfield with a dream, and they said, we're going to build and fly a human-powered ornithopter. Now, most of the folks at the airfield, when they said this, their first reaction was, "Orna, what now?" I actually knew what an ornithopter was. I knew that it was an aircraft that flew by flapping its wings, and there's been some experiments with it. Nothing really that big. And I was like, "Yeah, good luck, guys." And they said, "Well, it's going to be human-powered." I was like, "Yeah, good luck, guys." And then I spent a little bit of time getting to know them, and I took a look at the project. And I went up into the barn where they were building it, and I got to see what they were doing, and I was like, I think these guys they're going to do it. Where do I sign up? So I had the good pleasure of training Todd to fly, because he needed to learn how to fly. So I was one of the team who did that. I ran the ground school for them. I volunteered some time to help build the ornithopter. And most importantly, I was part of the crew that helped run it. So we think back to Icarus. Icarus was looking at this flapping wing flight model. And one of the reasons why you only see birds that are about 21 pounds that are capable of flight is because we get into the whole power to weight ratio thing. So this goes back to our whole internal combustion engine. And the amount of power, energy that you can get out of a human, that makes it really difficult to actually sustain flight. So Todd and Cam, they met at the University of Toronto while they were working on their degrees in aerospace engineering. Todd was working on his PhD, Cam his master's. And they got inspired, and they ran the numbers, and they figured out how they could make a human-powered ornithopter work. So the question becomes, how do you build and fly a human-powered ornithopter? Now, for anyone with an engineering background, as you know, a hinge is a focal point of stress. And whenever you have a focal point in stress in mechanical engineering, you need to build that structure stronger, which means you've got to build it heavier. And weight is an airplane's enemy. So you get rid of the hinge. Now, they were working on this as kind of a thought experiment in university. There were some French exchange students in from France, and there was a bit of a language barrier there because Todd and Cam weren't exactly fluent in French. And one of them said about the hinge, but what he was saying is get rid of the hinge. And in this kind of broken English, half French, they sort of figured it out. And what dawned on them was, we got to get rid of the hinge. And the moment that happened, they ran the numbers and they figured it out. And what's kind of ironic is Todd's PhD thesis had nothing to do with flight. It actually had to do with flexibility of materials. Because with modern materials, we can make a flexible enough wing that the wing can flap without having a hinge. So I'm going to show you a quick little short video, and you'll see the aircraft, you'll see it fly, and you'll actually see the record flight. But just before we do that, that's me in the white t-shirt. So yeah, my job was to hold the tail up, because when you first started the takeoff roll, it wanted to sit on its tail. So we had this stick that we literally stood behind and held the tail up. Anyways, let's watch this. Just to give you some stats as to what this is all about. First of all, we called the craft Snowbird, and it had a 32-meter wingspan. It was 42 kilograms in weight, and a kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So that's just shy of 90 pounds. Like, yeah, this is super light. The record flight was 145 meters, and we were only going 25 kilometers an hour. Now, by comparison, a Boeing 737-400, so that's one of the bigger Boeing 737s as it evolved, one of the later ones, it only has a 29-meter wingspan. So this craft at 42 kilograms was bigger than a 737. So next time you hop into an airliner and you look out at that wing and you're in a 737, we had a bigger airplane than that physically. So here's the technical drawings of it, and here's the scale representation of a 737. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. All right. Now, let's just dig into a little bit of the science of flapping wing airplane before we watch this. And I want to do this before, because when we watch the video and you see it flap, I want you to pay particular attention to the wingtips. One of the challenges with flapping wing airplanes is that you not only use the flap to create lift, but you use the flap to create thrust. Now, when we decoupled those, bolted on a propeller to an engine, all it does is create thrust. It moves the airplane forward. So if you're to take the wings off an airplane, fire up that engine with a propeller, you'll drive all over the place. You just won't take off. The wings, however, create the lift, so the air flowing over the wings. But when you go into flapping flight, what happens is we actually are creating thrust by the flap. And what we need to examine here, and this is a really complex thing, is the resultant aerodynamic forces on the upstroke of the wing. Because on the upstroke, that's when we create our thrust. And you'll notice that this picture, this is actually a drawing done by Otto Lilienthal. So this is all the way back in the late 1800s. They were figuring this out. And this drawing is depicting a wing in the upstroke. Now you notice that the tip is twisted downwards and there's arrows pointing down. So what's actually happening here is, as you have this parabolic curve of the wing flapping, the chord of the wing, or the shape of the wing that is, sort of, if we were to cross-sectional it there, is actually changing angle through the cycle of the flap. So during the downstroke, it angles down, and during the upstroke, it angles up. And by doing this, what we do is we actually create not only lift, but we also create thrust. So this is hugely complex. And you think about, how do you do this with a mechanical machine? And the trick to it is this little wingtip. And we affectionately called it the bat wing. And the reason we did that is because it was black, right? It was made of carbon fiber. Most of the plane was actually made of Kevlar, so it had either see-through or had that sort of yellowy tint to it. But the tips were black. And if you notice that they're canted aftwards. Now I'm going to come back to that at the end. So let's watch the video, watch those wingtips, and look for that parabolic curve. You'll actually see it in the video. Okay, you guys ready? You know, I've seen that video hundreds of times and I never get tired of it. So you could really see in the video there the wingtip as it twisted and the upstroke and the downstroke. And the way they did this is by having this aerodynamic portion of it hanging aft of the cord. So they purposely designed flexibility into the wing, not only from a flapping perspective, but also from a twisting perspective. Airplanes are an interesting thing to design because what you're looking for is something extremely light, but you're also looking for something extremely rigid. So if you ever get the chance to go out to you know, an airport, especially a small airport, you can, you know, walk up to a small airplane and grab that wingtip and, you know, feel it, give it a shake. You find it's a very stiff structure. It's very rigid. So in aircraft design, they're constantly battling with this whole rigidity versus you know, flexibility thing. And you know, you want a little bit of flex, but not too much, and you know, all this kind of fun stuff. Okay, so we're going to move on to the human-powered helicopter. So that was in 2010, and these two gentlemen put together a small team with their, you know, some of their fellow students, and they built and flew this Ornithopter, and that was pretty amazing. And when they came back 2 years later in 2012 and said, you know, we're going to build and fly a human-powered helicopter, I was like, where do I sign? How do I get involved with this? And again, as much as I possibly could, I was out there and doing what I could. Now, the human-powered helicopter, there's actually a competition that was launched some 35 years ago now by the American Helicopter Association, and it's called the Igor Sikorsky Human-Powered Helicopter Competition. So until recently, this was really viewed as one of those engineering challenges, one of those things that could never be done, but you know, makes for a good challenge and makes for a good learning experience for engineering students. So the challenge was to build and fly a helicopter that was solely powered by humans. And there was no restriction. You could have 1 or 5 or whatever. It had to fly for 60 seconds. It had to climb to a height of 3 meters, which is about 10 feet. And it had to stay within a 10 by 10 meter box. So you had an endurance element, 1 minute. You had a height element. And helicopters, when they're low to the ground, they're in what's called ground effect, where the air coming down off the rotors hits the ground and effectively bounces back. It's like a cushion of air that it sits on. As a helicopter climbs up above that, it loses that floor, that support, right? So as it pushes down, you know, to elevate itself into the air, it's no longer, that air is no longer hitting the ground and pushing back. So there's actually a lot more power needed at the 3 meter mark than there is at, say, the 3 centimeter mark. And then there's a control aspect, because a helicopter is effectively sitting on top of a ball of air. So it's kind of like, you know, those exercise balls that you see, or those office chair balls. And if you try to sit on one of those and, you know, pick your feet up in the air, you probably fall over. Well, that's what a helicopter is pretty much doing the entire time in flight. So helicopters are a hugely difficult thing to design when it comes to controllability. So hence the quadcopter design has a lot of inherent stability, because you've now got 4 pillars that this thing sits on. But just to give you an idea of the scope of this one, it's 46 meters across. So remember, the Ornithopter was 32 meters across. So this is a whole, you know, another, what is that, 14 meters, 13 meters wider. So it's bigger. But it's not just wide, it's also square. So this is a huge thing. The flight was 64 seconds and we hit 3.3 meters. Now, for comparison, a Boeing 777, right? And this is the big twin engine. This is the big wide body. This is Boeing's, you know, other than the 747, this is their biggest. And it's got a 47 meter wingspan. So again, next time you're down at you know, your international airport going for a flight, look at what type of plane you're in, and then look out at that wing, and you know, this is the type of sizes that we're at. Now, we were only in the air for 67 seconds and 3.3 meters. The Boeing sort of beat us there, because they can stay in the air for about 8.5 hours and they go to 13,000 meters. So a little bit of competition there, but you know. And by the way, there's a relative size of a person. Okay, let's take a video. We're going to watch 3 videos for this one, actually. So this first video was released to the team internally mid-project, and this was a video that they wanted to use to help inspire us. We're going to watch the video, and then I'm going to share with you a couple of the design elements, and then we'll talk a little bit about how that project developed. So I've just been given a heads up on the time, just to give you a couple quick insights on what's going on there. The drive system is like a spinning top. We actually wrapped string around each of those rotors and they went into the center. And so when Todd is there on the bike cycling, pedaling, what he's doing is he's reeling in the string from the rotors, which is causing the rotors to spin. And the reason it was so big is because if you move a small volume of air quickly, like a jet engine, you'll create thrust. But if you move a large volume of air, you don't need to move it nearly as fast. So as you saw, it was much slower. Now, it wasn't all smooth sailing. So I'm going to show you another video real quick. And this one is our big crash. And then after that, we recovered, rebuilt, and made the record.
Ready! Go!
Holy fuck. Holy fuck. So he's going for the record at this point.
Right hard, down slowly. Right hard, down slowly.
Good news, no one was hurt. Now, we had 71 separate breaks in the airframe, but we rebuilt it and we actually benefited because it was too flexible. That was part of the problem that we had. But what actually caused the crash is one of the air conditioner units in the ceiling of that huge building was left on. And that disturbed one of the rotors and caused us to crash down. But here is the unedited flight of the actual record.
Ready! Go!
That horn is that we've reached 3 meters of altitude, so we've made one of the 3 requirements.
More right, more back. More right, more back. More right, more back. More right. More right. More right, more back. Right, more back.
Now you can see Todd leaning. What's happening is we've got wires connected to the bottom of the bike to each of the 4 corners. And as you lean, it pulls on a corner, which twists the airframe slightly. And that's how we managed to do the control.
60. More back. 65. You're down. Neutral. Okay, you're down.
And that was the culmination of several years of work. So these 2 artifacts now, the human-powered ornithopters in the Canadian Aviation and Space Museum in Ottawa, which is effectively Canada's Smithsonian. The helicopter, on the other hand, while we offered it to many people and many people wanted it, it was too big. So half of her ended up in the Ontario Science Centre, a quarter in the American Helicopter Museum, and a quarter in the New England Air Museum down in Connecticut. Thank you guys for your time this evening. Sam, did we have any questions? And Sam, you are on mute right now.
All right, so that was fantastic, and I got to say I have actually seen the Ornithopter at the Canadian Aviation and Space Museum. It's amazing in real life. So we got time for just a quick question, and it's actually going back to the Ornithopter. Someone's wondering where the pilot sits in that.
Right. So the pilot sat in that little yellowish bubble at the bottom. So you're sitting pretty much right on the ground just before takeoff. So there was a small wheel just right below your butt. And the way they flapped was actually on a slider, so it was like a leg press. And then the mast went up to the wings. And part of the reason why they did that is it's aerodynamically more stable to have the mast low down and the wings high. but also you needed room for the flapping. So the pilot actually sat in the bubble near the bottom of the plane.
Amazing. So thanks again to Toronto fan favorite David Donaldson, and turning it back over to Matt to introduce our next speaker.
Thank you. Oh, I think Matt's struggling with some technical issues. Stand by, folks. Looks like Matt's gone into the dark web.
All right, so we're just waiting for Matt to resolve some technical issues on his end. I always blame it on gremlins in the system. We can also blame it on the heat wave, but I'm sure he will be back with us any second. So I will say that if you do ever make it out post-pandemic, have an opportunity to check out the museum in Ottawa, it's definitely worth a visit, not just for the Ornithopter, but for other pieces of aviation history as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Canada's got quite a rich aviation history background. Many inventions actually came out of Canada. In the museum, the Ornithopter's actually got the biggest wingspan of anything in there.
So definitely check it out. So I'm seeing we're gonna just let Jim jump in now. So take it away, Jim.
All right. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. I was on the edge of my seat on those videos. That was really cool. So I'm Jim Edelman. I am the brand new boss of Nerd Night Memphis. Until recently, I was boss in Iowa, where we hosted events at a couple of venues in Des Moines and Ames. I'm super excited being here in Memphis now, working with a great crew on Nerd Night. So big shouts out to Heather, James, and Joe. Lately, as we have all done, we've gone online. And our latest Nerd Night, actually, appropriately enough for Memphis, was themed around music. So we were lucky enough to work with Nick Black on that night, who's going to be talking to you about his latest musical challenge, which was writing a new song every day based on samples live on Twitch. I don't want to give too much away. But just to introduce Nick real quick, he's a multi-instrumentalist, vocalist here in Memphis. He's influenced by feel-good music of Justin Timberlake, Bruno Mars, musicality of acts like Al Green, Sting. So, diverse influences there. And he creates music that's modern and unique, but familiar, nostalgic. Just released a single recently, Grenadine. So he's excitedly exploring some curiosity in electronic music, adding to what's already a versatile sound. And I know he's planning a national tour. I don't know where that stands with COVID right now, but I'm really hoping that folks out there are going to be able to check you out in a venue near them soon. With that, I will just pass the ball over to Nick and let him take it away.
Jim, thank you so much, man. I hope everybody's doing well. Jim, can you hear me all right? Give me a thumbs up. Awesome, brother. Awesome. Well, it is an honor to be here with all of you tonight. My name is Nick Black. I'm an artist from Memphis, just like Jim said so eloquently. I do a lot of different things, but the main thing that I do is I have the opportunity to travel all over the country and out of the country to play music in my band, the Nick Black Band. So quarantine happened and some things had to shift inside of the music industry. And in all actuality, as many of you probably know, the music industry has been hit, the entertainment industry in general has been hit insanely hard because of the quarantine. So I had to find a way to not only stay busy, but to stay creative. And because I wasn't able to tour anymore, it allowed for a lot of time and a lot of opportunity to do different things. So I came up with an idea. After streaming on Facebook and going live and collecting tips and sort of doing the thing that everyone else was doing, I wanted to try something new. So quarantine happened, and we could no longer be on stage. The number of people that we could be in the same room with, people congregating together, got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller over time. Eventually, it was down to groups of 10. And though I've played to groups of 10 plenty of times, that's not necessarily a good scheme for making money as an artist. So I had to figure out something else to do. And I want to talk to you guys tonight about Twitch. Now, for those of you that don't know what Twitch is, I'm going to explain a little bit about that, and I'm going to explain my first experience with Twitch. So, what is Twitch? It was founded in 2011 as a video live streaming platform, and it was used primarily for video game Let's Plays and general interest. General interest meaning literally anything. And for those of you that are on Twitch, I hope you're on Twitch because it is an insanely unique experience and an amazing community. You know what I'm talking about. It was adopted by DJs at a certain point and radio stations. When I say radio stations, I mean that there were people that would just play music on a 24-hour cycle with some sort of cool background, maybe some sort of like anime steampunk thing with the playlist that was about to happen. Really, really cool aesthetic to the whole thing. Now, there has been a crackdown by the Digital Millennium Copyright Act on people playing copyrighted music on Twitch. Amazon has just purchased Twitch, and so things are getting a little complicated. We can really no longer play recorded music on Twitch, but that's a discussion for another time. The best way I can explain Twitch to people is that it is a community of communities, meaning that there is Twitch as a whole, but each streamer has their own aesthetic, their own milieu, if you will, to use a nerdy French word. You have to understand going into Twitch that there is somebody out there for you. They may have 10 followers, but you're going to find somebody who you really enjoy watching. Or you may become a streamer yourself. I had never streamed on Twitch, so this is sort of the beginning of that whole story. And each successful streamer brings something different to the table. So you've got music, you've got Let's Plays, you've got DJs, you've got random stuff, and we'll talk some more about that. Now, just to sort of break down what some numbers look like, because this is Nerd Night and we have to get down to the nitty gritty. One of my favorite streamers on Twitch is a streamer named Majin Phil. He streams a video game for the majority of the time. He streams a video game called Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. And what he does is he speed runs the video game for the most part. And speed runs are where, you start the game. The whole goal is to finish it as quickly as possible. There's different categories, but Phil's whole thing is that he cracks the game wide open. He breaks the programming, finds ways to go in walls that you're not supposed to. It's absolutely fantastic to watch. I would honestly, not that big into sports. My band certainly is, but I would definitely equate it to watching a professional athlete. It's watching somebody at the top of their game completely break open the game in a way you didn't think was possible. Now, Majin Phil is a streamer. He streams about 5 to 6 days a week. He has 80,000 followers as of a couple of weeks ago. It's probably more at this point. He may be hitting the 100,000 mark. So that's Phil. Then we have somebody like T-Pain. There's plenty of already famous people on Twitch that have kind of not jumped onto the bandwagon, but realized this is sort of a place they can do anything. Now, T-Pain will get onto Twitch and he'll talk about his tracks. He'll get inside of Fruity Loops or another, audio workstation, and he'll break down tracks. He'll show you how things work. He'll just be generally crazy. T-Pain has a great personality, and he's very, very easy to watch on Twitch. He'll also just play video games and usually lose. He's not one of those people that claims to be a great gamer. He just is awesome to watch. As you can tell too from this screen cap, he has a really great interface, and people have designed that for him. So when somebody subscribes, he gets a ticker. There's all sorts of different stuff that happens. You see his video footage in the bottom right. He's got a follow to stay up to date. This is all branding. And this is my kind of passion outside of music itself, is music business and music branding. So that's T-Pain. He's got 189,000 followers. That's 100,000 more than Phil has. Now, there's somebody like Brendan Urie from Panic at the Disco, already super world famous, goes on world tours all the time, plays to sold out crowds of thousands. And Brendan will get onto Twitch and he'll have concert footage going on behind him. I think that's Wolfpack behind him on a screen. He actually just got in trouble not too long ago because he spent most of this exact stream that I screen capped playing copyrighted music. So when you go back and you go watch the stream itself, the video on demand, most of the video along the playback line, the buffer line, is red, and that means that there's no audio. So like I said, Digital Millennium Copyright Act and the government are cracking down on people that play copyrighted music. Now, Brendan has 384,000 followers, not subscribers. We'll get into that in a second. He's got 384,000 followers. That makes sense. He's already somebody that has a huge audience. However, Brendan's not even close to being the top Twitch streamer. Most of the top Twitch streamers are Let's Players. They play Call of Duty. They play, they'll play Zelda. Really, first-person shooter games are the #1 top, though. However, just to give you guys an idea of some of the other top streamers that aren't strictly Let's Players, I wanted to talk about this guy. This guy's name is Ludwig, lowercase on purpose. Ludwig has had a sort of strange rise to fame as a streamer on Twitch. He kind of started in the beginning and has tons of viral YouTube videos where he just speaks his mind. On his stream, he'll say the most ridiculous, offensive, sometimes racist, misogynist things, but sex sells, you know? There's no such thing as bad publicity. So Ludwig has made a name for himself as a person who just speaks his mind. And he has 437,000 followers. And if you're on Twitch, you've heard of Ludwig. But if you're not on Twitch, you have most likely never heard of this guy before. And he makes thousands of dollars per month streaming. Right there, he's literally playing a bridge construction game. And he has 8,500 people watching him. And they're just spamming the chat with emotes and just trolly stuff, because Ludwig is a troll. He's the troll trophy, if you will. Now, then there's somebody like this guy I stumbled across. He's got, 33,000 followers. The Cardboard Cowboy. This guy basically puts a green screen behind him, puts a green smock on, keys out the video to where you can't see anything except his head and this cardboard cowboy hat that he has on. And he creates these amazing digitally rendered cardboard backdrops. So you can see there's a little train going along the bottom. Somebody just subscribed to him. The train is coming out of a tunnel and then it'll disappear. There's all sorts of stuff happening on the screen in this environment. So I just did this. I wanted to show you the variety of things that are on Twitch. There's literally an Australian cardboard cowboy on Twitch. And it gets weirder than that, but that's about the extent of what I need to talk about in this chat today. So moving on, I had to ask myself this question. How do you become a successful streamer? I wanted to move away from Instagram and Facebook. We already had audiences there, and I wanted to start over fresh. I wanted to do something that I'd never done before, and I knew just from sort of a slight interaction with Twitch, a distant interaction, that it was going to be the best option for me. So I started watching streamers and kind of becoming familiar with what they did. And I asked myself, how do you become a successful streamer? And I realized that's not the question that I need to ask myself at all. So what do I want out of this? What do I want out of becoming a streamer on Twitch? Well, obviously, from a business and a branding perspective, you want to build your social media numbers, right? You want to integrate with Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and sort of like pull them all together. I'm doing this very specific thing over here on Twitch. I want to grow my fan base. I want to explore a new platform, but most of all, and this goes over and above all the numbers, I want to create a community through music. That's always been my driving force. I want to see as many people as I can before I leave this earth. And I have decided to do that through music. Now, how do you build a community on Twitch then? I've decided I want to build a community. How do I do it? I had to come up with an idea, and here was my idea. The hook. I will stream for 30 days straight. Now, that's not continuously 30 days. I told myself and other people that I was talking to, I will stream for 30 days straight for 4 to 5 hours a day. That's a heavy undertaking. If you've ever tried to do 4 to 5 hours a day of anything, it is always a heavy undertaking. Now, the content. Every day I will create a new song inspired by a sample from another artist or musician. I wanted to, in the course of this whole situation, I was going to use a sample to create a song every single day on Twitch for 30 days. That was my sort of promise, to the community that I was going to be building. And the call to action, because there always has to be a call to action on anything of this nature. Send me a sample. I want you to send me a sample. I put the call out to everybody, made a nice looking video, put the call out to friends, family, and I said, send me samples. I had to figure out what I needed to start out though before I even began streaming on Twitch. What do I need? I need a computer, an audio interface, a camera, other miscellaneous audio stuff. So I had to kind of figure out what kind of stream do I want to have. I'll say as kind of a sidebar, this whole experience united all of my nerdery into one situation: audio, video, a little bit of lighting, and interacting with video gamers, working quick with my band and everything. It all brought it together. So I invited my family, my band, and friends personally via text and phone calls to join in on the stream. There's no shame in asking your family and your close friends to tune into the stream when you're just starting out. There's no shame in that at all. So I reached out to artists and musicians for samples, and I wanted keyboards, vocals, bass, drums, anything. I got stuff from people from outside the country. I got stuff from close friends, people in LA and New York, and began to build up a library of random samples. So a little bit of information. I wouldn't normally go into as much detail, but it's Nerd Night, so why not? There's really 3 statuses that you can have as a streamer on Twitch. You can be no status, a non-status, if you will. It's just people that stream and they, have very few followers and they're not really looking to push to the next level. Above that, though, you have affiliate and partner. I was going for affiliate. So the requirements for this that I had to meet by the end of the month, and that was my goal, I needed at least 3 views average per stream. That's over the entire 4 or 5 hours that I'm going to be streaming. I needed at least 3 viewers at a time. Now, I needed at least 7 unique broadcast days in 30 days. Well, I had no problem doing that. I was literally doing 30 days in a row. I needed at least 500 total minutes broadcasted in 30 days, 30 times 500 minutes, or 30 times, 5 hours. I was going to be fine with that too. The biggest hurdle for me to get over, however, because most of my fans are from live music, they're not really going to be on Twitch, So I had to get at least 50 followers in those 30 days. That was going to be a huge undertaking, but there's a little bit more information, just kind of breaking down the difference between affiliate and partner. Partner has much higher requirements, and you get a higher revenue share as a partner. So what do I get for becoming an affiliate? I can now get subscribers at $5.99 a pop, $4.99 for some, which takes Twitch takes 50% of that. And now Amazon and Jeff Bezos own Twitch, so you can imagine this has been a boon for Amazon. I can now receive bit cheers, which are like tips. I get a penny for every bit. The average cheer is for 100 bits, which is $1. And I get a portion of that. So the person that's watching the stream buys the bits for an amount kind of over and above that, then I get 1 penny for every bit. And I can now receive donations. People can just straight up give me donations over Twitch. And what do my subscribers get? After I get affiliate status, I'm able to get subscribers. Well, they get one custom chat emote per level of subscription. That is, there's 3 levels of subscription. There's different subscription level badges. So if somebody's been with me for a certain period of time, or they have like a tier 3 subscription, they'll get a different badge. And then they can use emotes for cheering. Like if they like something that I do, they can cheer inside of the chat. When all you have at your disposal are the words that you can type into the chat, you want to be able to do as much as possible. So you want to create the community that they feel like they can talk. And it's challenging. It really, really is. Here are my 3 emotes that I came up with. The first one is, of course, kind of the requisite face, the face emote, if you will, can be used as a reaction in any situation. The second one, which is level 2, the super junt. Level 1 is the junt. If you're not from Memphis, you may not know what a junt is. It is literally a word, a noun that can refer to anything. Hey, go get that junt over there and put it in the junt. Like it's just slang. That's all it is. But we use it extensively in Memphis, in this part of the country. So the level 2, you get the junt emote. Means you're a super badass, right? Then at level 3, at tier 3, you're a mega junt, and you get an emote of my pet bird, Marty. He's an Indian ringneck, huge part of my life. And that's why I put him as the level 3 reward. I had a secret through this whole thing, though. As far as building a community was concerned, I knew that I was going to get at least 30 followers. And why is that? Well, it's because every musician that I got a sample from would join the stream and become a follower simply through collaboration. Over those 3 or 4 hours, I would start from scratch. I would get the sample into Ableton. I would start from scratch and start moving the sample around, see how it motivated me. I rarely did any prep work outside of getting the session ready because I wanted to just work off of inspiration. And they would become a follower simply through that, through, chatting and being like, hey, you should try this. Nick, you should try this. And I would be able to talk back to them, create a dialogue, and I would get at least 30 followers through this. And I did. So I was 30 out of 50 on the way to becoming an affiliate. Also, we were sponsored through a company called Cordial Cables. They sponsor us on the road. They, give us kind of help with our electronic needs. They're an amazing company out of Germany. And they were kind enough to sponsor the stream. So again, branding, cross-branding with Cordial Cables makes the stream look official. It brings a sense of, corporateness to it, which I don't mind. A little bit of corporate is not a problem. So some outcomes and requirements from this whole situation. I learned Ableton recording software. I got to work on my musical chops. I taught myself Open Broadcaster software, which is what I use to switch between scenes. I learned about lighting. What y'all are seeing right now is my stream setup. I've got my keyboard here, my microphone, got some lights, got my guitars. I'm constantly going back and forth between this seat and grabbing guitars and instruments and everything. Do I buy a camera? Do I buy a capture card for the camera? And throughout all this, while I'm on my second computer up here working on the track, I still have to entertain people and keep their attention. So it's a huge exercise in quote unquote multitasking. So hold on here. Let's see. Cool. All right. So here is my Twitch checklist. And if this is what I do before every single stream, I have to go through this checklist. Otherwise, I will forget something. That's just me. Let's see here. So as kind of a final note, I reached Twitch affiliate in 25 days. I'm now at 93 followers, 17 subscribers, and I just finished day 44 in a row. This has been a huge undertaking, and I'm having so much fun with it. It's got its trials. There's technical mishaps just like there are here. But yeah, it's been amazing. So now I thought we could listen to some of the music that I created. Well, we've got time to listen to just a few. I'm going to play short segments of each one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play the sample, and then I'm going to play the song. So let's start. This is one that I got from my buddy Harrison in Memphis. All right, so really really chill Rhodes piano, right? Here's how this song turned out. Added a little bit of a sample up there and everything. That's me singing, but I pitched it up in Ableton. I got my trombone player to send in samples of him playing remotely. He recorded them on his phone. He was in the chat. We're all talking to each other to make it happen.
I've been waiting such a long time to make the perfect love rhyme, to make a better my life and make my parents proud. Oh, my ego has been so loud trying.
Yeah, that's the first one that I'll show you. Got time for a couple more. This one's a fun one. This is drums, and this is the biggest challenge, right? So I'm sent a sample by somebody, and they probably don't have access to super great recording software. This is a sample of some drums recorded on an iPhone. So it doesn't sound like nice drums or anything, but the player is incredible. Billy's amazing. You get this kind of trashy trash can sort of thing. Pretty cool, right? Very, very neat aesthetic. And this is what the song became. I supplemented the drums with like another kick drum and another snare. You can hear the way more powerful.
Woke up just the other day to a world I didn't know. I couldn't find the words to say to make my spirit grow. Now things.
And that's the song. That's the song. I think I've got time for probably one more. Let me see which one I want to do. Oh, this one's fun. So this is a student of mine from the University of Memphis. She sent me in a sample of her playing keys. She did it in GarageBand on her MacBook. And that's it. That's it. It kind of just sits right there, and that's the sample she sent. This is what it became. Like to showcase the sample. I'd never done any sort of EDM before this ever. This was the first one. Sorry, I had to do this. So as you can tell, it was a lot of fun. That sample you heard right there was actually my bird that I got him in the microphone and everything on stream. It was really, really fun. But yeah, this was an amazing experience, and I'm still going. So if there's any questions or anything like that, I would love to answer them. And yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on Nerd Night.
All right. Thank you, Nick. So one came in here looking over here. So this is less about the Twitch, but when you're teaching music, when you're trying to teach somebody about music and engage them, are you more like theory? Are you more hands-on practical?
It depends on the situation, honestly. I've taught all sorts of classes, but if I'm teaching somebody music, I have to start with kind of the emotional side of it, because you can sit and bang your head away at trying to figure out piano or guitar or singing. But if you don't have any memories or feelings to hook it to, people really don't care. Like, they don't feel anything from you, they don't care. So that's always my first sticking point with music.
And one more follow up here. So once the world gets back to normal, hopefully that's soon, right? What are you going to keep Twitch streaming? Are you going to go back to live? Are you going to try to balance them? Has this like become a new part of your life that's going to continue?
It has, man. And I didn't think that was going to happen. I didn't go into this project or challenge with any expectations at all. I thought, I'm going to stream for 30 days. And if two people are watching the entire time, I'm great. I'm done. I've created enough music. And before this, I haven't told anybody this. I went through the longest writing drought. It's the longest songwriting drought I've ever gone through in my life. This was a kind of kick in the butt that I needed to make something happen, to force myself in front of an audience on Twitch to create in front of them and make it happen. And I didn't have to be the one to start it. I used the samples. Having said that, when we start touring again, it's going to be really hard to find decent internet to make streaming on Twitch possible. So yes, it will stay a part of what we do, but I definitely won't be able to stream every day. But as of right now, man, I'm here. So
right on. Well, everybody, you guys can check out nickblackmusic.com, and you can check him out on Twitch. So yeah, thanks again, Nick. I'm going to have to shoot this over to Matt because we're just a little bit behind here.
Sure.
No worries. Nick, that was great. Thank you so much. And I do hope, again, on behalf of everyone in the events business, which is all of us, that venues open soon. So thanks so much for giving us half an hour. And Jim, thanks so much. And congratulations on your new Boston. I hope your move from Ames to Memphis is going swimmingly.
Thanks, sir.
Cool. All right. So for everyone watching, we're going to have Nerd Night Calgary up in about 30 seconds. Just a couple of things before then. Number one, since I didn't do this in the beginning, go ahead in the Facebook chat and just let us know where you're logged in from. I'm logged in from Brooklyn, New York. Last time we came to you on our second virtual North American Nerd Night, I was isolating in Norfolk, Virginia. We moved back up to Brooklyn. It's oddly safer here now after being sort of the epicenter of all of this in the US. Number two, in 58 minutes, we will have the bonus segment where Chris and I will look into my refrigerator, and for everyone who donated to watch this event on PayPal, you can make me eat and drink whatever's in my fridge. So that'll be super gross. There's still a chance to be eligible for that if you go to PayPal and donate to matt@nerdnight.com. Don't worry, that's our corporate entity for Nerd Night funding. I'm not going to steal it and go camping or anything, as awesome as that sounds. And finally, last thing, this session, like many of the other presentations we've done during COVID, as well as in the last year at a lot of venues around the world, will be posted and available for recording, not only here on Facebook on the Nerd Night page, but also on our YouTube channel. So since you've got time at home, go to youtube.com/nerdnight. Right now, after PayPal. I'm giving you so many things to do, and subscribe to our channel. So with that, Franco, go ahead and turn on your stuff. I'm going to turn over to the good folks of Nerd Night Calgary, and we're going to make the very Nerd Night-esque seamless transition from Twitch music sampling to learning more about COVID. So Nerd Night, we cover all the topics. Franco, go ahead and take it away.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Evening Nerds. I'm your anchor, Frank Kudas from Nerd Night Calgary, and just to everyone in Calgary, from Joey, Krista, Jason, Lisa, Bill, and myself, I just want to say thank you, we miss you, and we miss our nights together. In tonight's news, COVID-19 and how one province is dealing with the pandemic. Dr. Franco Rizzuti is the co-chief resident physician of public health and preventative medicine at the Cummings School of Medicine for the University of Calgary. He is the, I don't do news. He is the the Alberta Health Services Calgary Zone. He's also the president for the Professional Association of Resident Physicians of Alberta. And since January of 2020, he's been involved in various levels of Alberta COVID-19 response. His interests in the area are within public health and emergency and disaster management. population informatics and health system transformation. Tonight, he's going to give us a under the hood look at Alberta's response to COVID-19, from response, testing, contact tracing, treatment, and preparations for future waves. Franco.
Thank you so much, Frank. It's going to be hard to follow that great intro. So let me just get my screen shared and then we will take this away. And there we go. So thanks, everyone. We are going to, like I said, do a whirlwind tour of COVID in the next 20 or so minutes. And I definitely want to leave lots of time for your questions at the end. So think about them and keep them coming as we go along. So I can't start this presentation without giving a huge shout out to this absolutely amazing group of colleagues. So many of these are my co-residents. The two in the middle have just graduated and some of our staff. And so this small group of about 15 of us were absolutely critical in Alberta's COVID response. And I'll speak to little pieces of it. I put this slide up here not as a kudos to us, but just to show how a small group of people can really make some big difference. So we'll start with tracking the spread. So where did it come from? What do we know? And we'll go over some epidemiology to kind of lay the groundwork. So I want to walk us back a little bit. You know, COVID is cool. I spent the last 6 months living it, but I want us to think about any sort of accident or condition. And so we're going to just think about how do we count, you know, any sort of medical issue. And so for this time, I'm going to say, how many Calgarians fall and slip on icy days? And so, you know, at the bottom, we have everybody who fell, and, you know, some of these are self-treating. And then there's a smaller group that go to their family doctor for a sore wrist. There's an even smaller group that'll go to the emergency department. There's a smaller group that will get x-rays, a subgroup of that that'll get a cast, and a very small group that will get a surgery for their wrist. And COVID is very much the same way. When we're looking at the data, we need to think about all the various layers that might underpin what we're actually seeing. And so, you know, let's translate this into the COVID world. So we have the group of people who are exposed to COVID, and that's a much larger number than the group of people who are infected with COVID, which is larger than the people who have symptoms of COVID, larger than those who get tested and are confirmed positive, so our confirmed case. And then a small group of that goes into hospital for COVID. And then an even smaller group is going to have really serious life-threatening complications. Maybe they're going to need to be in the ICU. And then obviously a smaller group of that may die due to COVID. And so again, it's just interesting, and we'll talk a bit more about why I lay out this pathway, because we sometimes look at this last piece of, well, how many people are in hospital? How many people died? And really, that's probably not where we should spend our attention. So I can't start talking about COVID again without talking a little bit about the rationale behind why we do some things. And so when you've seen graphs in the news, you've probably seen a lot of this log transformed graphs, and you probably are wondering, or at least the epidemiologists among us, you know, get excited and think, okay, there's a reason we use log transformation. And so if we look at this bottom figure, that's just a normal linear curve. The scale is the same. So the distance between 1 and 2 is the same as the distance between 50 and 51 is the same as the distance between, you know, 100 and 101. There's no difference in this. And what you'll see is as the numbers get bigger, it actually gets really, really hard to see a small difference, or it gets hard to understand where are we going. And so we'll use this sort of curve when we start talking about sometimes flattening of curves. But as we get into big numbers, this doesn't work anymore because all the lines start to blur together. And so what we do is we transform this into a log function so that the distance between 1 and 10 is the same amount of space as the distance between 10 and 100 and so forth. And so let's just have some fun with these graphs and data. And so this is out of a great group at the University of Calgary that's been tracking COVID cases for a very long time. And they put together a great group, a bunch of slides and graphs, interactive data. The links here in the bottom right-hand corner. I totally encourage you to go check that out. So let's just see where some of these are. So that's China. That was our first, big hotspot. And you can see the cases kind of flattened off around 65,000 and just stay there. That pink curve is Italy. Kind of gets up to that 500,000 and then, slow creeping, but is staying fairly flat. That green curve is the United States. And it's actually so big that the website doesn't actually allow you to see the full number of figures. But this second last line up here is 1 million. That is, I think, 6 million or something like that. So what you can see, right, is the US is continuing to grow and growing quite dramatically. There's Canada in the middle. We're still seeing some increase, but kind of flattening out a little bit. There's Alberta. And we'll speak a little bit to some of this in the next few slides. We'll just kind of keep that little look that it's starting to creep up a little bit, right? This is Australia. And the reason I like pointing out Australia is Australia was doing really well. They were opening, and you'll see in this last little bit, they've had this up spike. And this up spike that looks pretty subtle here in a log transformation is actually what's leading to an entire state being put into full lockdown. And so you can just see how, these show you. And the last one I want to draw attention to is Singapore. And you can see how Singapore has had this very interesting waving curve, and where we think it's getting some progress, and then, there's more numbers. So just a few examples of how various different countries have seen their case counts evolve over time. So this is right now in Alberta. As of this morning, I was in meetings all afternoon. Otherwise, I would have updated it. But this gives us a sense that COVID is still here with us. And if you don't believe these numbers, here's some cases over time. So that orange hump in the bottom is the daily case count over time. And so what, we all remember April, May was lots and lots of new cases every single day. The pink line is the total number of cases. And then that green line is the recovered number of cases. And what's a little bit interesting here is that this green line is actually a little bit artificial. And so folks get really excited when they hear that, 80, 90% of positive cases are recovered. And I'll tell you kind of the behind the scenes there is that people in the system have one of two outcomes after they are diagnosed with COVID. Either they recover in 14 days or they pass away. There may be some hospital stuff in there that modifies it, but really these are the two options. Either they recover or they die. And so everybody that is recovered is actually just a time artifact that there's a 14-day delay. But what this graph shows is our numbers are still going up. We're not flat. We haven't hit a 0 point. And that's even more apparent with this data, we all get very excited about this big first peak we had. What I get worried about is that we started getting down to, low teens, 20s, and we're creeping back up into over 50 cases a day. And these cases are not a one-off case. These are clusters. This is a hospital case. This is, maybe a farming community. This is, an apartment building. These are not one-offs, but these are a larger group of people who are getting sick. So how's this different than other pandemics? And we'll just, give a couple quick pieces. So, we look at Ebola, very, very, very deadly disease initially, small number of total deaths. Annual flu is maybe about 100,000 deaths. COVID, and this data was from about May. We had 150,000 deaths. That number is now significantly higher. Swine flu was 300,000. And if we looked at our data today, we're catching up to swine flu deaths for sure. States has just shy of 3 million cases. We have 12 million across the globe. So this isn't a small entity. And what's interesting to the flu is it's more contagious, definitely has a higher death rate. And we're not entirely sure how this is spread right now, right? We don't have a vaccine, we don't have a treatment. And so this gets us thinking of really the only way for us to save lives is we need to get further ahead of this. We need to prevent it. And that's what I'm going to spend the rest of the talk about. So prevention, prevention, prevention. I'm a public health resident. This is what we do. But you're probably scratching your head and wondering a little bit like, well, okay, what the heck is actually prevention here? So one of the big names in public health, Jeffrey Rose, he says this quote early on, and it is a bit of a staple for us. It is better to be healthy than to be sick or dead. That is the beginning and the end of the only real argument for prevention. And really that's the foundation of what we're doing is the options here are prevent infection or someone has infection and then they may have the soliloquy of that. They may have the fallout of that. So how do we do this? Like, what are the tools we have? So yeah, we have an Emergency Management Act. We have some disaster frameworks. We have systems to help us structure things such as the incident command system. We have risk frameworks, but this really doesn't quite capture what we need to do for a public health emergency of the scale of COVID. And so let's just think a little bit about how we approach disasters. And so everybody is all excited about response, right? That's all we've heard in the news for the last many months is what's the COVID response? What's the counts today? But response is only one part of a 4-part cycle that those of us in the emergency disaster management space, those of us in public health, think about, where it's before that is being prepared, before that is thinking about how we prevent something from happening in the first place. And there's obviously after we're done a recovery phase. And, this is a little bit of a coming to the end piece and thinking about it, but we're going to have a long recovery here. Same way, we also think about all the various elements that contribute to a risk. You obviously need to have some sort of hazard. So here, coronavirus, some sort of way to get infected and an exposure, and you need to be susceptible. So all these pieces are what we're thinking about. Put another way, I think about what's the environment, what's all the specific details about COVID, and then, how susceptible are the people. And looking at these, we can start thinking about different ways to intervene. But this is very academic. So let's think about this in a very practical way. So let's think about going upstream and just look at the river of a COVID response. And so, again, a lot of what we heard about in the news was ventilators, ICU beds, right? This is the most downstream. This is after somebody is sick, they are in the most expensive spot in the hospital, needing the most amount of care. This is what we're looking at. There's potential treatment before that. There's all the masks and gloves that we talk about and that government's putting resources into. There's hand washing, covering your face. And you can see, right, that at that level, we're trying to prevent other people from getting sick when they're exposed or potentially exposed. But if we go a little bit further upstream, I'm going to talk about the disease detective work we do, contact tracing. We're going to talk about vaccines. We'll talk about isolation and social distancing. And really the goal at that point is to stop people from getting exposed. Because we know if we can stop people from getting exposed, we're hitting that bottom part of that pyramid I showed. And that's overall going to reduce the trickle effect up the pyramid. So why are these things important? Like I said, if we can contain, less people are getting sick. If we look at intervening earlier, we know that what we're going to see is healthier people, right? We're protecting those who are more fragile. So, say 100,000 people are ill or get exposed. maybe only 20 are going to die, or 200 are going to die. And yes, a loss of any life is a tragedy and a loss of life, but 200 out of 100,000 young people is a significantly different statistic than if we look at, say, Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, where the death rate there is somewhere from 30 to 50% of anybody who gets it is going to die, right? So we think about these pieces, and this is really why we want to move upstream. So again, let's be a little bit more practical. What are the elements that we thought about when we were figuring out how do we intervene? So the first thing we talked about and thought about was testing. And so in the early days of January, what we were doing was Prov Labs, so the Alberta laboratory testing, was one of the first in the world actually to develop a test to detect COVID-19. It was right up there with the Canadian National Lab, which is one of about half a dozen labs in the country that are level 4 that can handle these really scary bugs. And so we were pretty much competing, on the world stage to have a test. Challenge was we could only do like 30 tests a day. And so in public health, we needed to filter out who should actually get the test, who shouldn't. We then had to think about, well, at what point are we going to change how we make the test available? So we use community paramedics to go to people's houses so they didn't have to come into hospitals or labs. We then eventually thought and opened up a variety of assessment centers where you could go in and get swabbed. This has now evolved to a point where, just like normal lab work, you can book your COVID tests online. So that was one part of it that we needed to figure out. We needed to figure out surveillance. How do we track our cases? How do we have this real-time data? And again, Alberta had some of the infrastructure, but it still took us months to actually develop all the dashboards and reporting and getting the systems to work so that we can put out the data that Dr. Hinshaw reports every day to the public and have websites that are available, right? There was a lot of infrastructure needed to be built. We'll talk a little bit about education contact tracing as we come. We needed to prepare acute care. And really that was the genesis of the entire strategy of flattening the curve, is we needed to get our hospitals that normally function somewhere around 102 to 110% capacity down to 80% capacity. We needed to make about an 8-fold increase in our intensive care beds. So we had to cancel surgeries. We had to relocate ventilators from the ORs or from recovery units to have that capacity. We needed to rearrange hospital units so that we could have dedicated COVID sites so that we didn't infect other people. Some of what's happening right now in the Misericordia in Edmonton speak to some of the breakdowns and processes of maybe a staff person going to work sick or interacting with staff from another unit on a break. And how does that work? So we had to think about all of these processes. Lots and lots of time went into us thinking about social supports. So it's really easy for us to tell somebody go isolate. It's even harder for them to actually go isolate. And so we need to think about that. And then we need to think about what's their structure. How do we actually make this work? So I'm going to talk about contact tracing. So some of you may have seen this on the news. We really wanted to highlight the great work of the medical students. And so, we had a team of about 100 medical students in the course of only a few days to weeks learn how to do contact tracing. And they were the team that was able to manage 300 new cases of COVID positive individuals a day. And really, it was them being exactly what it sounds like. They were disease detectives. They would phone an individual who had a positive test and pretty much ask every detail from 2 days before they had symptoms up until the time of the phone call. Where did they go? What did they do? Who were they in contact with? How long have they had symptoms? Did they travel? Who's living in the household? Do they have symptoms, et cetera, et cetera. And then from there, we create a list of, well, who are all the potential contacts? And that's really the secret sauce, is calling all these individuals to say, hey, you may have been exposed. Can you please stay at home? Can you watch for symptoms, et cetera, et cetera. And this is part of where some of the new apps that are coming out, a lot of the focus needs to be as we move forward. we know that this contact tracing is absolutely critical. It is the only way for us to identify who the likely next set of cases are and to provide them the support they need to isolate before they develop symptoms. So we're too late. If you're having symptoms and then start isolating, you're too late. We need to start people from moving around before they have symptoms if they've been exposed. So I'll talk briefly on vaccines. I'll be pretty frank here. Vaccine development is going to take quite a bit of time. Even though we're rapidly going through, I do not anticipate a vaccine for the fall. At the very earliest, we're looking at early 2021, which means that when we're anticipating a second wave, we're not going to have a vaccine. And so we just need to think a little bit about this. But even with vaccines, let me just show you a couple things. So say this is a population. All these people that are yellow are susceptible. The few that are blue are vaccinated. So say 10% of the population gets vaccinated. That's our top left corner. If we have 90%, that's our second bottom one here in the right. And so let's just take a disease like COVID, assuming all of what we know and how infectious it is. This is what will happen if we put one person who's infected into these populations. And what we're seeing is that we need to get to fairly high vaccination rates before we can say that herd immunity is going to protect us. And so we just need to think about the fact that even if we have a vaccine, if only 5, 10, 20% of the population get it, we're not going to be near where we need to be. This is kind of the 30 to 50%. We're still going to have a lot of people that are getting sick. So there's a big, social component, which leads to why we're focusing on isolation, quarantine, and social distancing. What we know, and this is strong data from the flu of 1918 that I'll speak to in a sec, our work with military, we know that keeping 2-meter distancing, keeping people who are sick, isolated, keeping people who might be exposed, quarantined, keeping everybody else away from each other is the most effective way we have to stop the spread of the virus. If the virus can't move from person to person, it will die out. And so there's a little bit here of a pitch of people need to take responsibility of themselves to protect others. And so here's a really interesting piece. So this was Philadelphia, 1918. And, and we'll look at Philly and St. Louis. And so Philadelphia didn't have any social distancing protocols in place. They started to lock some stuff down a little bit early, but not really. And you see this massive spike, and then it came down and it trickled. St. Louis, who implemented all of these social distancing isolation measures early on, flattened their curve. And yeah, what happens with flattening the curve is we bump out the peak, but their total number of cases are way less. And it allows the system to respond. And this is why we're so focused on social distancing. And so the last little thing as we move forward, these are all the things we need to do if we want to talk about lifting restrictions and getting back to normalcy. Our community transmission has to be under control. Our health system then has to be able to manage all these cases. We need to make sure that those at highest risk, so those who don't have a fixed address, those with immune conditions, the elderly, we have settings and processes to protect them. Every workplace needs to have protocols in place. We have to have a control on our borders so that we can't import new cases. We're seeing this happen in New Zealand and Australia. They get it under control and a new case comes in. And really the last piece is the community, and each of us need to be engaged. We can't run back and forget everything we've been doing as soon as we move to the next phase. And so a little bit of my pitch is we all have a role to play. So hopefully I've given you a whirlwind tour. These are definitely some things we should think about as we move forward. Huge thanks again to the team and everyone. And I will leave you with, these are some great slides or resources to really speak about solid information if you want to know more. So check them, they're updated every day. And it's back to you, Frank.
Well, thank you very much. That was excellent. We've got time for maybe a question or two that was in the chat session. And well, there's a couple of good ones here, but I think I'm gonna, just because personally I'm interested in this one, what your thoughts are on the reasoning that Sweden's approach was, and was it worthwhile at all for them?
So it's it's a great question. It's one that definitely has a lot of debate in the public health space. And so Sweden took kind of the Philadelphia approach, right? We're not going to do anything. They had their mass case counts at the beginning, and then the numbers died off. What's interesting though is we're looking at the data, and we don't actually know if these people who got sick early on have immunity. We just overall don't know for the virus. And so the thinking of just let people get infected and develop immunity is one that we don't know if that holds true with coronavirus. And so because of that, I say it's a dangerous gamble of, people are getting sick and we don't know if this is going to be a lifelong disease or they're going to be able to be protected from it in the future. My approach is you're better off to be a little bit safe and overcautious than expose individuals to a disease that we don't really know what it's going to mean for everyone.
All right, excellent. Thank you, Franco. Back to you, Matt.
My pleasure.
All right. Thanks, everyone. That was great. And I think this night well encapsulates the spirit of Nerd Night, where we've gone from human flight to Twitch samples to COVID. And we're going to get to a mystery one in about 30 seconds. Well, if you looked on the website, you'll know what it is, but there's some special introductions to happen. Okay, so Nerd Night LA team, fire up your webcams while I make another 15 seconds of quick comments here. So everyone, again, just two things. Do subscribe to the Nerd Night YouTube channel so you can watch fun videos like these anytime you want at your leisure, as we all seem to increasingly have more, well, actually sometimes less free time. And also in 30 minutes, to be fair to the next presenters, if anyone wants to donate to help Nerd Night run its servers, donate some money to Matt at nerdnight.com via PayPal, because I'm too old to have Zella or Venmo. And as the reward for donating, you can watch me go through my refrigerator and bar in half an hour and make me eat and drink all the gross things. So with that, Nerd Night LA, talk about Nerd Night LA for a moment.
Thanks, Matt.
First of all, I didn't know what half of those money sharing services were, so do not feel bad. And also, I'm slightly afraid for your well-being and the things in your fridge, but that's fine. Hi, Riley.
Hi, Katie.
How's it going?
It's going good. Hi, Nick.
Hey, Cora.
Nick, you're muted.
Hello. No, I'm not.
There we go.
Hello.
Hi,
You're
everyone.
here.
But you have a drinking horn, so that makes it makes up for
Filled
it.
with White Claw. Great.
The classiest.
Yeah.
Katie, you want to lead us off?
Sure. Anyways, as we have kind of already spoiled, we are Nerd Night LA. Hello, everybody. Hello, the internet. I am Katie. We have Riley and Nick here as well. We are your Nerd Night LA co-bosses, and our normal home is the Burbank Pub on Burbank Boulevard in Los Angeles. But we are currently all over the place. I'm currently in my childhood bedroom, which is kind of weird and interesting. But yeah, so we're here. We're doing the virtual Nerd Night thing.
I'm currently in my garden.
What is that? Can you describe this plant? It's very out of focus.
It's a cherry tomato plant. It's
a plant you can actually eat later. That's look at that urban farm. Great. Look at that. It's awesome. Anyways, tonight we are joined by some new faces to Nerd Night LA, which I'm very excited about. So I hear there is a very special intro happening for them. So
I've been told that they want to tell you a little bit about themselves on their own. But their topic is something that should bring you all back to your cartoon childhoods. They will be talking about the line of Acme products featured in by Wile E. Coyote in the Roadrunner cartoons. I won't tell you much more than that, but I'm really excited about it. And so our speakers are Daniel, Professor Dennin, and Ben from the FGGGBT podcast, as they commonly abbreviate it. So I'll pass it off to. What's that?
What does that stand for? What does that stand for, Riley?
That stands for the Fascinating Gadgets, Gizmos, and Gear-Based Technologies.
Good.
A great mouthful. All right, we'll pass it off to them. Gentlemen, please take it away.
You got it. That was an incredible intro, Riley. Thank you so much. And Katie, so first of all, thank you to Riley, Katie, Nicholas, thank you so much for this opportunity. I want to tell you, there's probably no better place to watch this than in your childhood bedroom, because we are going to be talking about the Acme product catalog. So I've got some, oh, here we go. So I'm going to put up so hopefully everyone can see what's going on right there. Okay, so it's FGGBT. That's a little snappier than I don't know what you guys did there, but FGGBT. We are a podcast that makes fictional science and technology a reality. So there's three of us. My name is Daniel J. Glenn. I'm the executive producer of this podcast and Fascinating Nouns, which is a show about incredible people, places, things, and ideas. I am known as the analytical mastermind. And with me is physics phenom, Dr. Michael Dennin. Now, you may recognize him from his time on Ancient Aliens, but he's also a science expert on several history documentaries, including Batman Tech, Spider-Man Tech. I think I'm going to get this right, Star Wars Tech. I always goof this up. But he is also an author of Divine Science, Finding Reason at the Heart of Faith, physics phenom, Dr. Michael Dennin.
Hey, Dan, I'm so excited to be doing this Nerd Night live. I love everything nerd. So this is going to be a lot of fun. And it's great to be virtual.
No, I think this is great. And of course, we can't do this show without our enigmatic engineer, Ben Siepser. Ben is a former rocket scientist, current neurobiomechanicologist. I don't know what the official title is, but basically, Ben works at the intersection between machines and biology. He is now currently working on devices that will open up and explore the hidden secrets of the human brain. He is our enigmatic engineer, Ben Siepser.
Glad to be here, Dan. I'm very excited to be on Nerd Night.
I'm happy to have you here, as I always am. So I'm going to switch this to the presenter mode so that the person talking, so we get a little more focus here. So we are going to talk, of course, about the Acme product catalog. Now, most people watching are going to know this catalog as being part of the Wile E. Coyote's. He's amassed a huge fortune and is be able to purchase all these products. But there's some other high-profile clients that use this. We're talking Bugs Bunny, Porky Pig. Sounded like Porky Pig there. Daffy Duck, and even Roger Rabbit. These guys all consume Acme products. And he is, as we know, the Coyote's in a relentless pursuit to catch the Roadrunner. But we got a little trick here. We really have to kind of understand what is going on in this world. There are some tricky physics. They're cartoon physics. And we've got an entire panel that we dedicate to cartoon physics, but we're going to talk about a couple things you need to know before we dive right in to the products themselves. So first of all, as everyone knows, we have gravity manipulation. So as anyone who's seen this, they know exactly what we're talking about. Dennin, I'm going to let you take this one.
So, okay, it's really important to go here, at least from my view, left to right. I hope that's the same way it looks to the people watching, because I never know when virtual worlds get flipped. Right. But this is what we see as the classic violation of conventional gravity. So the Roadrunner and Coyote meet on the underside of a bridge. In the normal world, they fall, but they do not fall. They stand still. Now, the Roadrunner, being incredibly intelligent, points down, at which point the Coyote looks down and the Roadrunner does not. What happens? We all know the Coyote falls, but the Roadrunner does not fall. It is only the person who makes a measurement and notice gravity that falls. This is what we refer to as quantum gravity. It's a very technical term and it's very practical.
I think it's not in your conventional physics book. This isn't something Newton wrote about, but this is the kind of stuff we're dealing with in the cartoon world for sure. Now, the other thing, this is really the thing that the Coyote has to overcome whenever he's going after the Roadrunner, and that is this concept of zip. Now, zip is kind of essentially defined as the Roadrunner's ability to go from 0 to warp speed instantaneously. So that is kind of what we have to overcome. Ben, since you're a former rocket scientist, a propulsion guy, I think you can probably explain this a little bit better.
Yeah, so zip, what we see here is the Roadrunner having incredible acceleration. Through very, very careful video analysis, we discovered that the Roadrunner is going about Mach 15 in this scene, which is 9,000 miles an hour, very fast. And what we realized is that accelerations like that require immense amount of energies. And the Roadrunner would have to eat an entire cup of bird seed just to get up to that speed. And you think, that's not so much. But what's even more impressive is the air drag that the Roadrunner would experience during this moment would require an additional 70 cups of birdseed to eat to overcome all that drag. And that's assuming the Roadrunner has perfect metabolism, 100% efficiency.
Right. Well, I love that you called it bird speed there, because I'm guessing the official name is bird speed, bird seed. If I was a marketing guy, that's how I would promote the stuff. So now here's how we're going to do this. So now we're going to get into the product catalog here. So I'm going to play the part of Daniel J. Coyote. Now, Wile E. Coyote, as you can see, is a certified genius, much like our physics phenom, Dr. Michael Dennin. Now, I'm just an analytical mastermind. But if I want to catch the Roadrunner and I'm thumbing through the Acme product catalog, I want to know what's going to work the best. So I've recruited my two favorite scientists to kind of walk me through this. And again, what we really have to overcome is zip. How do we catch up to the Roadrunner? That is key, because the Roadrunner doesn't want to get caught and the Coyote wants to eat him, that whole thing. So let's first talk about the propulsion product line. Now, obviously, we've got a rocket scientist on our staff here, so we're going to talk about that. Really, he's going to be the guy who's going to run point on this. We should establish how fast the Coyote would need to go. So, Ben, where do we need to get up to? Is it Mach 15? That's the speed we're going for here?
Well, so there's yeah. I mean, if we're talking about the what we see in the cartoon, which is of course reality, is that the Roadrunner can go, somewhere between Mach 10 and Mach 15. Then the Coyote would actually need a rocket about the size you see on the screen. That size actually checks out pretty well.
So this is amazing how accurate this is.
I am sure the physics science consultant on the show must have done the calculations, and they nailed it.
They sure did. I love that. All right, so let's hit our first product here. We've got the jet-powered pogo stick. Now, so I'm Wile E. J. Coyote. I'm looking at this. This is the first thing I come across in the product line. Dennin, what do you think about this? Is this good to catch the Roadrunner?
I think you want to wait, Dan. Save your money. This is not quite the investment you want. It is certainly a lot of fun. One of the challenges is, and you can do it with the pogo stick. Obviously, you can move forward if you want and you point it, but fundamentally, the pogo stick is designed to go up and down. And it's unclear what the jet is really adding to you here. What's interesting in the picture, if you notice, he doesn't go that much higher than if he was just bouncing on it. Though the Coyotes don't weigh that much because he hasn't caught the Roadrunner recently. So he may not have the mass necessary to make the pogo stick go, much as I did not have the mass as a child to ever make a pogo stick work. So
I do love the parabola shaped flame there. That's
yes,
incredible.
no, that helps. And the picture, the physics isn't quite right because he is still shown as being straight up and down, he's not really going to go in a parabola. He's got to get some horizontal thrust going.
Right. So this, I guess, Ben, I'm gonna just double check with you on this. So this is almost useless unless the Roadrunner is directly above him, correct? Or in a parabola shape right behind him.
I mean, he'd probably be better off just leaning the pogo stick over and using it as a rocket.
I guess that makes sense. All right. So we got another, I'm thumbing through, got another fan favorite here for you. What about jet propelled tennis shoes? Okay. First of all, they're stylish. I love the exhaust on the back. We got a button on the side there. I don't know what it does. Ben, what do you think about these?
So what's interesting is, obviously I'm an expert in rockets, but I know how jets work too. So what's interesting about these is, What's good about these is, in general, the shoe you have planted, you don't want that one to move, because that's generally how running works. Is you don't want the foot on the ground to move. So when you step down, since it's a jet, that jet will turn off, and the one in the air is the one that'll fly forward. So theoretically, you could get a little boost to your kick forward. Whether or not that's really helpful, I think you'd probably just have a Wile E. Coyote moment and flip around, but
Right.
it at least makes sense from the mechanics of a jet.
Okay, that makes sense, and it's got the exhaust. I think is what you need for a jet as well. Dennin, what do you think about these? Do you like these both from a stylistic standpoint, aesthetics, and from a functional standpoint?
Well, stylistically, I do like them, and I'm assuming the button on the side is the pump, so that you can pump the shoes and actually have them stay on when the jets activate. Yeah, exactly.
Brand, right? Okay.
Well, Acme, sort of maybe copied a bit in this case.
Sure.
The challenge, as Ben said, the physics of walking is one of friction between your foot and the ground, giving you a force forward as you push back on the earth, right? It's an interesting thing that you push back and then the earth pushes you forward. And so again, kind of like the pogo stick, you're not really leveraging anything here, right? The natural physics of walking doesn't lend itself to being sped up easily without pulling muscles in your leg or wrenching your back or spinning you around in circles. So I would almost jump up in the air, activate the jets, and hope I could figure out how to fly like Iron Man. But I think there's much better ways to do that.
Well, I think that obviously you're right there, but one of the things here is friction, right? Like it's the friction of the shoes and the earth or whatever is on the pavement that's going to be tricky with this one as well. I guess if we're doing it the way you guys are talking, if you're just jumping in the air and turning them on, then I do love that pressure sensor.
Although one thing to think about is since you have the jets firing, as you step down, it's going to suck your foot down kind of hard for a second, which maybe gets you a little bit of extra friction as you're.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. Good or bad? Well, so friction's the enemy here, but I got something else for you. I'm thumbing through. What about roller skates here? We got some jet powered rocket powered roller skates here. Now, here's my fear here, guys, and I want you to alleviate my fear if I decide to buy a pair of these. If your legs go splayed on this, right? I like the way I said that. If the legs go splayed, best case scenario, you're going to pull your groin. Worst case scenario, you're going to tear yourself a new butthole here. How do you kind of keep these things going straight so you don't have, as you mentioned, a Wile E. Coyote moment?
It's tough. I actually wouldn't even worry about that so much as the fact that rockets to work have to go through the direction their thrust is going has to be through the center of mass of the object they're propelling. Now, we know the coyote doesn't eat. He's never caught a roadrunner before.
Right. Yeah.
So
right.
a very malnourished coyote, maybe around 10 kilograms. But if that's the case, those shoes would have to weigh a lot, like hundreds of kilograms, for the center of mass to be anywhere near where the rockets are. So odds are what's going to happen is he's going to spin around in a circle because his thrust is way, way, way off axis.
Well, if you're not worried about pulling your groin with these things, you've never done it. I once seriously pulled my groin and I was purple from the waist down. So that is always going to be on my mind when I see something like this. Then does that hold up?
It does. I think what's going to make you safe, Dan, is exactly Ben's comment. You're going to flip around in a circle and crack your skull long before you pull your groin. So your groin is safe. Okay, good. Let's just go with that. Notice Wile E. Coyote is trying to overcome this physics problem by leaning forward.
Yeah, he's trying to get lower.
He's trying to get his center of gravity lower. So he's at least demonstrating his genius capacity there by trying to do the right thing and get low. So
he needs to be on the ground, though.
Yeah, he needs to be a lot lower.
He needs to be like limbo low.
Yeah.
I will say I probably speak for a significant portion of the population where I say that if it was the choice between cracking your head or splitting your groin, most people are going to go with the cracking of the skull. I think on that is my guess. So we're in. You don't like this shoe stuff. What if we try a rocket sled? Now, one of the tricks here, obviously, it's on rails. You got to lay the rails down first, but this is going to at least make sure that you're going in the right direction. Dennin, what do you think about these?
Well, this, from a physics point of view, huge improvement. As Ben said, you now have the main force most obviously acting through your center of mass. You don't have to worry about torques that are going to rotate you in a circle. He does have the little arrow guide on the top of the sled to remind himself which direction he's going to go. I like that. He's finally decided to add a safety helmet. I wasn't paying too much attention earlier. I think this is where he finally added it. The only real challenge here, as you said, is laying the track ahead of time and making sure the Roadrunner stays on the track and doesn't just step to the side.
Right. I think he has the helmet from the skull cracking comment you mentioned earlier. He doesn't. Right. He took my advice. Let's avoid both if we can. Ben, do you like this?
Yeah, no, it's exactly right. The thrust is now in the proper location, and more importantly, this is an actual thing that's used in the real world. Rocket sleds are real and are used to test high speed collisions and all sorts of stuff.
Right. Now, I will tell you, I've seen this particular, I know how this story ends, and quantum gravity gets in his way here. So that's one of the things that's unavoidable in that world. All right. So, obviously the downside here is going to be the tracks, because you have to lay them down ahead of time. And if you're the Roadrunner, you just go where the tracks aren't. Well, how about this? How about a couple of skis? How about some jet-powered skis here? I like this because you kind of have reduced friction, especially if you're on a slick surface like that. Ben, what do you think about these?
I mean, these are even better. So you still have a bit of an issue with the center of gravity or center of mass. The jets are pretty low, but what's good about these is that it's a little higher, and the jets plus the skis are a lot heavier. Those boots are pretty massive. So I could actually believe that the center of mass isn't that far off. The other good thing about this is you have a much better control surface with skis versus like roller skates or any of the other things. You can use the carving in the snow to really aim yourself very well.
Now, I would argue, just like the roller skates, you still have the groin problem here. Dennin, what do you think about that?
Well, that just makes me question your skiing ability, Dan. Sorry for that. I mean, it's a potential issue, but as Ben said, at least personally for me, I feel much safer on the skis from that perspective than the roller skates. A lot more control, a lot more surface. I do have my own personal concern with this scenario, which is it's unclear to me how many roadrunners are in the mountain and high desert where there's snow. I feel like the Roadrunner is not a snow-based creature, but I'm wondering if Wile E. Coyote just gave up on Roadrunners and is hunting snow rabbits or something like that.
I think that might be right. Or to get away from the coyote, he went off into the snow-covered peaks of the Sierras or something.
Yeah,
like
that is possible.
Yeah,
Now,
the only other concern I'd have with that one is with the because it's a jet again instead of a rocket, you have to worry about the intakes, and his tail is dangerously close to the intakes of those jet engines.
Well, I got to tell you, if tail intake is a concern of yours, you're not going to like this next one, which is just a straight up rocket here. So, or I'm sorry, jet motor. So what if, in the Acme product catalog, you can buy just a straight up jet motor, obviously attach your own handlebars, but that tail, it's very close. That's close to the exhaust, but how you think on the safety features on this one?
I wonder, safety features, hey, you got handlebars, you can hold on. I mean, obviously a seatbelt would help. He seems to have given up on the helmet. That clearly wasn't doing him any good. But I do worry about the steering of this. This has to be awfully well designed to do anything useful, I would think, and to fly actually in any sort of normal trajectory. This seems ideally designed for a Wile E. Coyote moment and to just have the thing go crazy.
All right. Okay. That's a pretty scathing review there, Dennin. What about, so I don't know how you're going to feel about this last one, but let's see here. This is my personal favorite. What about a jet propelled unicycle? Now you got to, satisfaction's guaranteed on this. So that's definitely a bonus. I like that. I don't know if you can return it, if it's a 30-day return policy or what's going on there. But Ben, what do you think about this? Obviously I love the underwear shaped seat. It kind of contours to the buttocks. It's going to be very comfortable. But what about from a propelling standpoint, if that's a phrase? What do you think, Ben?
I mean, from a physics perspective, this is the most rational one we've seen. So
that's saying a lot. All right.
I mean, the reality is the action of the jet, again, and it looks more like a rocket to me, but either way, is actually acting in the direction that it needs to for this to work. So it's spinning the wheel faster, which makes sense. It's spinning the wheel at all because I don't see any pedals on this unicycle.
Right. No,
so,
nothing there.
But and that's how a unicycle works. You spin the wheel to go forward. And so having a jet spin a wheel for you, that seems totally reasonable to me.
Now, obviously, balance is an issue here. Dennin, what do you think about this?
Well, that's just your generic learning to ride a unicycle. And it can be an issue, but Wile E. Coyote is a very, very athletic, lean, mean fighting machine. And I think he can handle the balance quite well. You remove all of your concerns, Dan, right? Because he's not worried about his groin having issues. It really is. I'm a little curious. There doesn't seem to be any speed control. So that could be a minor issue. You have whatever speed the jet propelling is giving you. But, you know, he's really only trying to get fast enough to catch the Roadrunner. So as long as he's at a high enough speed, I'm sure he's not worried. And leaning to and fro will allow him to steer it as you would steer a normal unicycle. So and I love the fact that you get to take advantage of rotational physics. Anything that's spinning has a lot of cool physics with it. Was always my favorite demos when I did intro physics, the weird things that can happen. So I just love the fundamental physics being used here. So with all of those factors, I would very much encourage you purchasing this product.
Okay, I mean, it's definitely going on. It's a shot to the top of the list. As you mentioned, my groin problems alleviated by that wonderful little baby swing seat there that I love. Okay, so now we're past this. I've been sitting at home during quarantine. I've been watching a lot of Hulu. I notice there's lots of almost delightful commercials promoting Tremfya, Stellara, Skyrizi. Who doesn't want to join Skyrizi? I'm not normally a pill guy, but they got a whole pharmaceutical department here. I'd like to at least explore this a little bit. This pharmaceutical division here. Let's start out. We got to augment my already natural abilities as a coyote. Daniel J. Coyote. I just love saying that. So what about this? What about some leg muscle vitamins here? Now, the way this works essentially in the cartoon is he takes, he basically eats this family size. That's a lot right there, family size. Get a whole family up to speed. Takes it, ingests it, and it becomes instant muscle. Is that how this works? I'm curious what the science is behind this. Dennin, I'm going to ask you, is this kind of how this would work in a normal human body?
Well, yes and no. I'm always concerned in a lot of these cartoon situations with timescales. Right. This certainly happens at a high speed. However, it is a movie. It could have been a time-lapse photo, right? We assume it happened right away, but maybe Coyote has a little bit of patience and he's taken these and it's taken time for the muscles to grow. The reason I'm a little worried about it, I mean, we do know that we can help muscle grow faster, right? That's something we can do. We prefer to do it through exercise and working out, but there are other ways you can do it. Speed is always the problem. And from a biological point of view, rapid growth, unfortunately, is usually what cancer is. So I would be worried about the side effects of this for the coyote. Anytime you go for rapid growth like this, that would be my number one concern. And you pointed it out. I'm still not sure why Acme is selling family-sized versions of leg muscle vitamins, but that's I think a question for another panel. It also excitingly predates Costco and kind of predicts the family size of everything.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's, if you're going to chase it, if they work and you want to go after the Roadrunner several times, now you have the option. You're going to see a theme here. Vitamins is a very tricky word because this almost looks like the PEDs that allow our athletes to reach new levels of heights, which basically, the way steroids and those types of things work, they basically allow you to recover quicker. So you break down the muscles when you work out. This lets you recover. But this probably includes both the steroid and the protein because, of course, Ben, I'm sure as you know, you're going to have to include the proteins to build the muscle as well.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you can't just have, the steroid. You need to have the matrix of the protein and other nutrients that you build the muscles from.
Yeah, I do find interesting, Dan, you've mentioned it. I think there's some advertising there by using the word vitamin. Right. Sure. That's assumed to be good. But I do want to know what triple strength fortified is.
Oh, well, that is something we're going to have to get to later on because I got some more vitamins for you. How about some super speed vitamins? You'll notice speed is highlighted there. Now, I'm guessing, Bugs Bunny, he pops 2 pills and he's off to the races. Some of these vitamin things, these really kind of reek of, the turn of the century type of vitamins that they were giving out. Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup for children. There's cocaine toothache drops by Lloyd Manufacturing. Look those up. Those are real things. Those are really funny. This kind of speaks of meth. He's only got 2 teeth in his mouth. And anyone who's seen Tiger King knows you can have a real problem with methamphetamines. But as far as this actually goes, boosting your metabolism, getting it up to speed, so to speak, is that a way to kind of harness the power of these type of speed vitamins? I'm going to ask you first, Ben.
Yeah. So having energy that makes you having the energy to make you go faster is certainly a real thing. Like people, when they take caffeine or speed or all these things, that they go faster. I think what's interesting though is you still need the energy. For example, if Bugs had to go as fast as the Roadrunner does, which I mean clearly he must, he'd have to eat like 35,000 carrots to do that sort of thing.
Right.
I don't see 35,000 carrots worth of energy in that little vitamin jar there.
Well, now what if it was the chemical? What if it was the methamphetamine or whatever the chemical is plus an energy source? You feel better about it then?
Sure, but you need a lot of energy.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges here, Dan, from a physics point of view, is energy density, right? Almost any chemical bonding, we know what the basic energy is contained in those chemical bonds, and fundamentally, eating is breaking down chemical bonds and converting that to other types of energy in your body to make your muscles work. So it's not like you could go and say, okay, I'm suddenly going to do the equivalent of running a nuclear reactor. Right. So when Ben talks about 35,000 carrots, if I remember the number correctly, proteins versus sugars versus complex carbohydrates contain slightly different amounts of energy, but it's not orders of magnitude. So you're not going to suddenly go from 35,000 to 2 pills. And I think that's the real challenge, is energy density.
Okay, that makes sense. All right, I got one more thing in the pharmaceutical division for you. What about a little high-speed tonic? We got specific vitamins here, not just generic vitamins. We got RP and M. Now, when I've watched this seems similar to something like PCP or like Novocaine for your extremities, right? So this allows you to push yourself where your normal warning signs in your body would stop you from doing something crazy. This kind of goes further than that. Now, as a side effect of PCP, one of the downsides is suicidal impulses. And as you see, Ben, you mentioned he likes to strap himself to an unlicensed Cold War era rocket pack, which in some, especially we're 70 years out of the World War II, that's suicidal. What do you think about this?
Well, first off, I gotta say, Acme would never sell unlicensed products, only the highest quality products from Acme.
My apologies.
But I think it's exactly what you talked about. So one of the things that drugs like PCP and other things do is they inhibit your ability to experience the fact that you're damaging yourself when you're exerting. So it's certainly possible to push yourself further than you normally would because you're not experiencing the downsides of your exertion, but you're still getting hurt. And there's not that much headroom above what hurts us.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Dennin, what do you think about this?
I think that makes a lot of sense. And it particularly is consistent with the lettering on the jar, because you have R minus P. I assume P stands for pain. So you take away the pain and then plus M, right? That's sort of what I figure. But, it is a sort of common idea that part of what keeps us from our maximum strength and our maximum speed is those built-in inhibitors in our body that allow us to not injure ourselves. And the coyote at this point is so desperate, let's be honest. He hasn't eaten a Roadrunner ever. I think he's willing to take this risk, take the tonic, and push his body to new limits.
No, I think that's true. And again, I'm looking at these. I'm not that kind of coyote, but they look like they have some great results. There's one more item. This is an honorable mention in the pharmaceutical line, and that's the hair grower. I love this. We don't really have time to go into it, but this is one of my favorites, especially because this is also guaranteed. But we're going to save that for another day. So this, of course, comes to my question, gentlemen. Daniel J. Coyote here. I want to know, well, what is the best product to catch the Roadrunner? Ben, I'm curious, what do you think it is?
So we saw a lot of products here today, but I think the best product is one we didn't see, which is it's a little inhumane, but I think the Acme super glues and the Acme giant fly papers are the things I would go with. Sticky traps to me seem like the best way to catch something moving really quick.
I like that. I imagine there's a physics degree of how much speed would overcome the stickiness factor. I assume that's
absolutely
a term in physics.
You need a very deep pool of sticky stuff.
Right. the SF. Dennin, what about you? What do you think's the best thing?
So I'm going to go kind of hybrid here. I'm going to talk about a product we didn't talk about on this show, but people can catch us discussing it in other places. We do a lot with the Acme magnets and the Acme steel shot birdseed. I would use it in a way the Coyote doesn't. Get some of the steel shot in the Roadrunner to slow him down. I might then hop on my rocket jet unicycle to get a little speed. And as I get close to the Roadrunner, I will throw an Acme magnet at him. And the steel shot inside him will make sure I don't miss. And the magnet will knock him out, and I'll have caught my Roadrunner.
I love that. That's like the triple jump of Acme products.
It is.
And for fans watching the show, I want to apologize for Dr. Dennin's comments there. He didn't mean Acme steel shot. Everyone knows it's Ace steel shot. You know.
Oh, sorry. That's right.
I
I added an extra letter in there.
That's okay. I apologize for Dr. Dennin's behavior. It won't happen again. So that is our show. We are the Brain Trust. Again, our podcast is FGGBT. It's a little snappier that way. I know the name is a mouthful, but this is how you can get in touch with us. And of course, you know, here's the show. So that is our presentation. And I believe we're kind of skating in on time, or I don't know when we started, when we're not, but we're happy to take questions.
Yeah, I've noticed a few.
Hey guys.
Hey,
Nicholas here. Guys, thank you so much. Such a great presentation.
Thanks, Nicholas.
Anyone at home who's up for clapping, please give it up for our amazing presenter. I'm going to start with my own. Ben, you mentioned that the Roadrunner was sometimes moving at Mach 15. I think you placed his movement somewhere
Roughly,
around Mach 15, Mach 20. How did you come up with that figure?
Oh, very careful video analysis. So we calculated how long that road was in that shot and how many frames it took him to traverse that distance, and then distance over time, and there you go.
I believe there was some analysis of the plume, the dust cloud coming off of him, based on how fast it was growing and how quickly it was progressing. I believe some of that factored into what Ben was doing. This wasn't back of the envelope stuff here, guys.
We estimated
this was back of the bar napkin.
Yeah.
High-speed camera shit. Love that.
We estimate he went about a quarter mile in 3 frames. And when you work that out, it's about 9,000 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's all right. Yeah, it works.
Wow. Interesting. Along that same line, Riley Gibbs had a question. How much could the Roadrunner reduce energy required by wearing something similar to a form-fitting running suit or track gear if he was to wear something that was friction resistant or something to help?
I'm just thinking about those feathers, you know.
Yeah, well, it might help. It's actually a good question. When I did the calculation, I used the drag coefficient of like a diving hawk. So it's already pretty good.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's an interesting question. Which is better, the bird's feathers for aerodynamic purposes or a suit we build? And I think it might be a wash, assuming that the Roadrunner evolved for maximum speed. I'm going to give evolution in biology a big nod here in that regard.
Yeah,
and that we might do well to mimic the Roadrunner suit for our runners.
Yeah, an interesting thing to think about with air drag is that you actually want somewhat of a rough surface on the thing, because that captures these little bubbles of air next to you, and the air on air is much lower friction than air on a smooth surface. And that's kind of why golf balls are dimpled and things like that.
Makes sense. Cool. Our next question, I apologize if I get the name wrong. Sidsel.
Katie doesn't have one? Katie doesn't have a question? You're going to start hitting the LA. I thought LA was getting their first crack at it. Katie, huh?
I mean, I will ask the question that I had. I honestly don't know if somebody else asked it. But I was, as soon as you said Mach 15, I was like, how the hell does any creature survive Mach 15 without any sort of protection or whatever? I Googled how fast the space shuttle goes while you guys were talking to compare. So I don't know, would there actually be damage to him being just going that fast? Would he black out or something like that?
Well, the Roadrunner has very strong plot armor, but
sure.
but a real animal, no chance.
Okay. That's my question.
Great question.
Thank
Great
you.
question.
Sidsel Bassball Pedersen, I again apologize if I just murdered that.
Sounded great to me.
What is the difference between a rocket and a jet? I know that we touch
Yes.
on that a rocket and a jet are different, but what would be the I guess differences by definition?
Yeah, so the big difference is a rocket is a closed environment that brings both its fuel and its oxidizer with it. So when you think about like a spaceship, you have a tank of often liquid oxygen and often like kerosene, and those two mix together in the rocket chamber, and that explosion / burn is compressed, comes out the nozzle, and that's how you propel. A jet, on the other hand, only carries its fuel with it. So like an airplane, the wings are a fuel tank, but the air is the oxygen, the air in the atmosphere. So the jet uses air, and it uses a complicated set of fans and compressors to compress the air enough so that it'll actually burn the fuel efficiently. And that's where the thrust comes from on a jet engine.
Excellent. Interesting.
And that's why for the jet, the Coyote is more worried about his tail, because there actually is something to suck things in.
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
closed. The rocket, he's just worried about it getting hot.
Yeah.
Now, I also want to remind, this is a rocket and a jet performing under conventional physics. This is not in the cartoon world. They will not function in that same way. Just want to make sure everyone's aware of that.
Yeah. What's interesting is actually, though, both can be cool on the outside to the touch with fairly simple cooling techniques. So we saw the Coyote sitting on the jet engine, and that is actually totally feasible.
Interesting.
No cartoon physics required.
Without getting burnt.
Yeah.
He would
Yeah, or
absolutely
plot
slide
armor.
off the back of it without a seat, but
Yeah.
you could totally not get burnt.
Excellent. We got one more here from Jim Edelman. Single favorite Acme product.
Well, for me, that's easy. I love the super large electromagnet that the Coyote tries to use. There's nothing like electromagnets. So much fun. That's got to be my favorite. But I do have a second very strong favorite, which is portable holes, which we dissect the entire physics of in an episode. So I have to admit, I snuck in a second one. I hope I didn't steal anybody else's favorite, but
It was a
by
shameless
going
plug as
first, I was
well,
able to
so-
do that. Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Dennin totally stole mine. I love the invisible paint and stuff. Where, I love the idea that you could just paint a hole on a side of a mountain and have a tunnel. I think that would help us a lot in this world. We could get some train lines in places that we desperately need them.
I think that's great. My favorite are the gigantic rubber bands. I remember it when I was in college. Someone had like this wrist rocket and they were launching oranges across the street.
Nice.
I know it's highly illegal, but making that to like a Coyote size, I feel like in one of our other longer panels, we talk about how you could catch up to Roadrunner speed with that. I like the giant rubber band.
Excellent. Well, I believe that is all the time we have for questions. Daniel, Ben, Michael, thank you so much for being on and sharing your wisdom with us. If you're interested in more stuff with these guys, the FGGBT podcast.
Triple
G.
Did I say double?
You said
Yeah,
double.
triple. You need
How
three.
dare you,
That's why I
sir?
said each individual one to make
My
sure I got
apologies.
each one of them in
Count,
there.
you can count them out. 1, 2. Yeah, triple.
Counting. I'll do it next time.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much. It
Thank
was
you.
awesome to
Thank
be
you.
here. Thank you.
This was
Matt,
great.
Katie, Riley,
Love Nerd
and Nicholas.
Night.
Thank you guys. This is amazing.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.